Hey everyone, it's KMC here. I am back with a new version of my KMC chat. We are trying it the new pandemic way, which is great because I can talk to a lot of people in different locations if I'd like to, or if they'd like to talk with me. And it no plane tickets, no, we don't have to wear the masks right now, but I would love to see my guests in masks whenever I could. Today, I have one of my best buddies from Palm Springs with me today, Nick Valenziano. How you doing, baby?
I'm doing really, really good, Keith. It's funny you say best buds from Palm Springs because I feel like we are connected from Chicago, but that's just,
Well, the dots are there.
yeah.
We didn't connect until we got here. That's
Hmm.
actually, uh, why don't why don't you explain that? I mean, I grew up in River Grove, Illinois,
Hmm.
small, western suburb, and you grew up in
Mount Prospect,
Prospect.
Illinois, a little bit further northwest, but the same general area.
And we
And
and then so you grew up there and you were schooled there, and then cut to a few years later, I was introduced to you here in Palm Springs, which is where we both are currently.
I
And do
can't
you
tell the
remember
story.
that meeting? Do you remember that
Do
meeting?
I, do I remember that meeting? I need a prop for that meeting.
Oh no.
Um, Sidebar, Keith's husband, Mark, and I went to high school together, John Hersey High School. Mark graduated in 78. I graduated in 80. So we just knew each other a little bit. Never saw each other after high school. And then he went off to U of I. And then what year was it that Mark connected with me on Facebook?
Well, we moved here in 13.
Okay. And I had been living in Palm Springs since 2008.
Hmm.
And Mark said, hey, my partner and I have a condo there. We come out a lot and we'd like to make it permanent. When we come out next, can we meet with you and chat and reconnect? And I thought that would be really fun. And so we were going to meet at a place called Street Bar, which I understand still exists, though no one has been there
Right.
in years and years and years. But we did. And I recognized Keith from his profile picture, and he arrived before Mark. They were coming from separate places. And I recognized him across the room, and he did exactly what I would do in the same situation. And I've needled him ever since about it. He stood by the door and picked up his phone and pretended to be just faxing, the governor or something to avoid me because we're basically, even though this isn't going to prove it, but we basically are pretty shy people. So then Mark did come in and they came over, and it was like I said, it was Mark and I, had lots to talk about from the past, but with Keith, there was just this bond of shared references and experiences. And I think every television show we watched in our childhood, we each were watching at the other end. And that's how we met.
Yeah, and the story is pretty accurate. I was intimidated by being alone in a
Sure.
gay bar and uh, thinking that oh, I'm here. I'm going to meet one of Mark's friends, and it'll be great to just sit and chat. And I love meeting people, and I had been to that bar before, but never by myself. So Mark was meeting us for some reason, and I was on the phone trying to see where he was at some point, but I was like, I think that's the guy. And, and I didn't want to get into it with somebody else and then have to stop and then, discuss,
Totally understandable. The
But
reason that I still hold on to that story is I related, and that was sort of the first thing between us that I thought, I get this guy. I know who he is.
it was, well, there's no question that it was, to me, it was instant brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever you want to say it. We continue to connect on a lot of levels and
Yes.
stuff. So so as you said, we grew up in the Midwest, and so let's talk about some of those experiences of growing up in the Midwest. You are you're the only boy, am I right? In your
I'm the youngest of four and the only boy, and I've heard all the jokes and the punchlines, and they're all true basically. But it was a nice childhood, good family. We're still all connected, kooky, but that's where I come from.
So you were the youngest. So what's the difference in age between you and the oldest sibling?
8 years.
8. Okay.
8 years. And she happens to be lesbian. So there's two of us at the top and
Oh,
the bottom.
that's a good
And then
percentage.
it is. And then two middle sisters. And then there was 4 years before I came along. So there was no way I wasn't going to be spoiled. I mean, and
Well,
they still refer to me as the prince, but
princess, but that's a different story. I mean,
yeah.
their hand-me-downs went to you. I mean, no wonder why you have that fashion sense, as I call it. So that I have an older brother and a younger sister. So my family life was very small. I mean, I didn't know from that. So you had did you feel you had close relationships with your sisters, all of them, or just some of them? Are you closer to one more than the other, just because of logistics and age and stuff?
Sure. Interesting question. I think, and without getting all, psychological, I think that knowing I was gay from the day I was born, and for many of us, perhaps, put me in a different place. So while we were close, and while I was certainly, seriously, the sort of spark of the family, with the funny jokes and the,
Of course.
peacemaker for everybody else when they get into squabbles, I still always kept myself a little apart, just a little separate. And I can, looking back now at this stage of life, I'm okay that was the way it was. It's not like, oh shoot, I could have just plunged in and been more. It was just fine, and close with all of them since. Some I talk to more often because they're easier to talk to than others. But we all get together and it's fine.
Well, you're so Italian, as I am too. You're more Italian than I am, but I am Italian. Uh, you grew up Catholic, I'm assuming?
Catholic school for the first 8 years.
Ah,
Nuns,
so
old style nuns.
you have that in common with Mark, my husband.
Right.
He went to Catholic school as well. I think he
My
wants his money back now, but that's another.
I wish I don't wish I could, but in all honesty, my experiences were not bad. Nothing bad ever happened. My mom was the secretary to the priest at the rectory. So those guys were just like people to me. They'd come over for dinner sometimes on a Sunday night. I'd stop in her office after school. And because of how I view the world, it was sort of, her office was the Mary Tyler Moore Show. She and the funny priest sat in the same office. There was the kind of dingbat priest, Father Hosty, who would come in every once in a while from the other office and say something stupid, and Father Trello would say something, and Mom was always just pretty and dressed right and everything. And then the pastor was this gruff, sort of lovable, cantankerous guy. And there was the sort of odd character female who worked in the basement printing church envelopes, and counting the money and stuff. And that was and I used to just sit there and watch it all and see it as a sitcom. I think I see a lot of life as a sitcom.
It is. I mean, kind of writes itself. There are so many things in my head of everything that's happened in the past few, months and stuff.
Well, yeah.
Make a good series. It would make a good series.
It will eventually.
And it's going to. So were you treated differently in school because your mom was part of the?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So you actually were already labeled as, that guy.
Right. And when I said earlier that I was the boy prince, I say this, I hope it doesn't sound conceited, but it is just the way it is. I learned early on that if I were quiet and very well behaved, you got more than if you were that spoiled, angry brat, right?
Oh, you learned that?
Oh, yeah, early. My mother took, why, you didn't learn it? My mom took me everywhere, both of my parents. And on Friday afternoon, I would walk with her to the Lady Fair Beauty Salon. At this point, we lived in the city. And I would sit there and I would draw different ladies' hairstyles and stuff. And I'd say, Mrs. Johnson, you should wear your hair like Jackie Kennedy, or, Mrs. So-and-so. And they would all bring me cookies. And I would always say, Mom, may I have a cookie that Mrs. Johnson brought for me? It wasn't quite Eddie Haskell. I know it sounds that way, but I guess it was an audience. And
So you knew early on that you had that gift of manipulation to a good degree. I mean,
well, you know what? That's the only way that grounds what I'm saying about myself. Otherwise, it just sounds like conceit. But
yeah, well,
but by all means, though, there was a level of that. I thought, again, I know I'm different, but I'm going to make my niche that you're just going to love me so much that if you should find out this other thing, it'll be okay because you love me. Which I actually now kind of hate, because that's that whole, when someone says to you, well, you're gay, but you're not, like that kind of gay. So I was masking it. I was trying to be the best little boy in the world, but it got me here.
Sometimes you can't hide the way it is, right? So, I mean,
True.
Your true colors are always going to come out because you're so spectacular in everything you do. I mean, come on, it's fun. So, growing up, the way we did in the Midwest, I never thought about that whole gay thing or what a gay life would be like. That wasn't anything on my radar and stuff. But, the things you're saying, we probably had the same interests, growing up, and probably in music and, and like you said, trying to hide it from the world sometimes. And it was difficult, but it just was the way it was. So what were your, you talked a little bit, like what were your interests as a young boy with television and music? And did your parents influence your music choices as a kid?
Not directly, as I know in the same way that your father did for you. Mm-hmm. Mine was more indirect. My mother we had a big hi-fi in the living room, and mother liked to listen to a singer called John Gary.
Yep.
Or Dean Martin. We had some Doris Day albums, but they were very mid-century in their taste. I don't know how it happened, but just like you, at some point, I went to Carnegie Hall. Well, not literally, but the Judy album, front to back, you and I could do it right now. We can sing them all and stay all night. And that led into Barbra Streisand, Bette Midler. Again, total cliche. My bedroom walls when I was a teenager had the Barbra Live at the Forum poster on one wall, A Star is Born, Barbra on one wall, Judy Star is Born on the other, and then I had a bunch of 8x10 frames on one whole wall that were like covers of Bette Midler on a magazine, or Mary Tyler Moore was another big sweetheart, big. So yeah, I was out there in those ways. I wish I could say that I was really into, Metallica or something, but that just never happened.
Yeah, my walls growing up, my brother and I shared a room for years. Once he went to college, so I had a few years, the walls became mine.
Farrah Fawcett came down.
And, right, I mean, that's what the walls were. It was Farrah Fawcett, we had Charlie's Angels. I remember having a Fonzie latch hook on the something. Yeah, I think it was a latch hook, a Fonzie. It was crazy, But Cher was a big.
Oh yeah.
For me. Cher was big for me. Judy, Carnegie Hall, I think, is what tipped me off to start my my really big obsession with Judy, and then I learned, and it was all on my own. And it was before internet. I mean, didn't have stuff like that. So I learned a lot by watching PBS, because they would occasionally rerun a TV show and all that stuff. But the appreciation of the music of Judy. I grew up in a house where my folks listened to Steve Lawrence, Edie Gourmet, Jack Jones. My father had musical groups to listen to, not just vocalists. And
wasn't he a musician?
Pardon?
Wasn't your dad a musician?
My dad played trumpet.
Jazz?
My dad played trumpet, and and to this day I'm still playing French horn. And it was a it was a choice for us to do, but Dad definitely wanted us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother, sister, and I all started on it. I continued it through grade school, and then through high school, through college, and then through just general life. And here I am still today, doing it. Unfortunately, not the way we want to do it with a group.
Right.
I just did this where you put your headphones on and you play the song that's being, and then you're videoed, and then they put that whole thing together with sound and video, and it's a little crazy, but I trust the sound editors will make it all sound good. So so the band, we just did something like that. So that was kind of fun. But when I think about it to this day, it's like I'm still doing that. I mean, it really meant a lot to me for my dad to say back then, you're going to get into something. I want you to be in something. When you got into high school and stuff like that. And I wasn't sports like-minded in any way. I mean, I was always the manager of the group, or, I was passing out, uniforms or this. I kept busy that way, but there was no interest in the actual sport. So
you were passing out the uniforms, not collecting them?
I'll talk to you about that later too, but that was fun. But Dad sat us down and said, you're going to do something. You're not going to not do something. And so
Right.
and I chose music to get involved in, and it has really just been a lifelong love. And but my listening music really was just for, I'm a old timey. I don't remember anything past 85, I think, in pop music.
I'd say the same.
My life changed when I started theater. Then I was listening to every Broadway album that there ever was. So
yeah.
That was different. Did you have a lot of Broadway stuff in your growing up? Did you have records at home, or?
My folks did when I was little. There was the Camelot and Sound of Music and Mary Poppins. Sound of Music was the first movie I saw in a theater, I remember distinctly. A few years later, we went as a family to see Funny Girl, and that just,
At the movies? You got to see
theater.
That? Oh.
At the theater.
How old were you? You were very young.
69, so I was 7.
Yeah.
And I went home, and I would just stand out on this sort of balcony with a bunch of roses, like the tugboat scene. And in those days, it's so funny. Do you ever think about this, Keith? How many things we knew in our heads after seeing either one time at the theater or on television, like a TV theme song. I mean, I was singing the Mary Tyler Moore Show song 3 weeks later, but I'd only seen it those 3 times. There was no recorders, no video, no YouTube. And same with movies. You'd come home, it was a little bit later, but you'd come home from Maine and my friend Tommy and I would be doing Bosom Buddies. It was just kind of, you had to remember it, I think, on just a couple of tapes.
Yeah, because it wasn't like we had today where you could just watch a YouTube over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that stuff. Don't get me wrong. I can get lost and spend hours on.
Well, I always say that if I were a teenager today, I would never leave my bedroom because
why would you?
We got excited with the Sears catalog.
We all had the same page. I know we all did. It's
the Wild West. Yeah.
Oh, you had crushes when you were young?
Oh, crazy crushes.
Well, come on, tell me about that. Who was one of your crushes?
Who wasn't, sort of, but the one that leaps to mind is James Garner.
Oh,
I just think he's at every stage of his life, as the young guy, as the Doris Day guy, as Maverick, that big, and then, manly.
Then Victor Victoria.
Yeah, yep.
Where he's still beautiful. He was a beautiful, beautiful guy. Yeah, no, he was hot. Yeah, he was hot.
Yeah, and then Robert Conrad, of course, and even younger. I mean, Batman, even though that was the most sexless costume he wore.
It was still kind of hot, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, and I
thought Robert Conrad was. I look back now going, God, yeah, he was super hot. And then Chad Everett was also one of them.
Chad Everett was a very good one. And in a different way, what was it? Season 5 when the Bradys went to Hawaii and Dad was in a bathing suit.
The only reason to
Memories.
watch that episode.
Memories. No, Vincent Price. Vincent Price was the
Oh,
reason
yeah.
to watch.
He was a classic, for
But
sure. Did you, so then going on into like, high school, which I think is where you actually met my husband.
it was performing. Mhm.
You were both performing in,
Well, Mark truly, whenever I say this, he denies it. He was kind of the star of our high school
in his mind,
theatrical.
or
No, not a bit. He was the one who did like all the feature dances in the plays. He was the Mr. Applegate in Damn Yankees, and the Ray Ralston part.
he didn't play that role.
Yes. Who's got the
No.
pain when they do the mambo? Who's
Oh
got
no,
the
he
pain?
did
when
that
they...
number. That number's different than the
Oh, you're right. Glenn Russell was.
yeah.
Yeah. But Mark
did
was
the dance part. Yeah, that's what he said.
was and is extremely talented, and I was in all the gay things, the show chorus, which was like Glee, the regular chorus, theatrical. But I was always backstage for the plays in the theater. I was stage manager or doing that kind of thing. There was some level of, fear or stage fright in going out onto the stage. But when I was in the group, when I was in show chorus, then I was fine. I was just, even if I had a feature or a solo, there were people around me, and so I have some fear of falling off a ledge, kind of thing.
So were you and Mark close?
No, only because of lack of time. Really, he was there for his senior year, and I actually arrived at that school my sophomore year. So
He's 2 years ahead of us in school.
Yeah.
As I
Yeah,
remember.
if I had gotten there as a freshman, it would have been 2 years, freshman, sophomore, and he would have been a junior, senior.
So you weren't like best buds or anything like that. Just acquaintances.
Well, he was, at that stage too, 2 years he was older. He was with the big kids, so to speak. But we would be at cast parties together. We had in the English wing of our high school was the English resource room, and that's where all the gays and theater girls all hung out, between classes and at lunchtime and stuff. So I knew him from there. So yeah, we were more than acquaintances, but less than best friends. And then he went off to U of I.
Which spawns another whole connection.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's incredible, 6 degrees of separation and stuff. So let's talk about that a little bit too. So one afternoon, I remember going to lunch with my husband, and he said one of his college professors, that's what he said, we're going to go have lunch with one of my professors who he actually never had, but he studied with or, knew he was there and knew of him. And he asks me a lot to do that when I meet people. He's like, just come, let's go, do something. And I agreed, and I went. And I met him, and he was a charming, delightful, handsome, just brilliant man. I loved it. And I went back to work, and you and I were working at the same place. And I think I have a picture I was going to show you because I had taken some pictures at lunch.
We would congregate for coffee every day at 10 o'clock in your office.
I miss that.
Yeah, me too. And catch up on the day before. And so I said, what did you guys do yesterday? And she said, we went to lunch with a professor of Marx, and turned to your computer and went to Facebook and said, oh, this guy. And I saw him and said, I must meet him. Keith, you've been holding out on Rhoda. You had Joe Girard right there the whole time.
The whole time.
And you weren't going to say anything to me about it. So I was a little bit persistent because I think it was Mark in particular who said, I don't do fix-ups. They don't work out. So after a little bit more persistence, you guys agreed to have six of us to dinner at Grind Burger Bar.
Yeah.
And Mark was also, you guys were doing that art fundraiser for the center a few weeks after. And so you had invitations that you used as place cards for the six of us. That were the invitation and the place card. And I got there early enough to figure out, was it better that his name is Ken, that Ken and I sit across from each other, or should he sit next to me? And ultimately, I put him across from me, and he came. The other two guys, I guess there were two other guys there. I don't recollect.
There were.
I know. And it was a fun night, and Ken and I mostly just chattered. And he walked me to my car, and I said, "Would you like to do this again?" And he said, really, I can remember the face. It was very earnest. And he said, I really would. And it felt nice. It didn't feel like it was going to turn out to be a pickup. So we went on a date a little while later, and that was 4.5 years ago.
Is that how long it's been?
Yeah.
So I did do something right.
Oh, more than one thing.
Because you've always said if it's something that it happened, you blame me for it. So
something bad happened.
If something would happen. So, but I know that's a double-edged sword, and it's just so funny that it just happens to be, Mark, knew him, and then just the four of us, and it's been great having Ken in our lives, in our Palm Springs lives too. So.
Well, and what I always say is that I like to point out the times where Facebook was good. And in meeting you guys, again, Mark would have never found me here without Facebook.
True.
Then you and Mark and Ken wouldn't have reconnected, and then ultimately the whole thing. And while I'm certainly not a defender of Facebook, especially lately, and I always toy with going off, there are those times where you do find an old dear friend, or my second grade teacher and I send little notes to each other and stuff. But this was definitely a winner on your part, both of you.
Well, thank God for everybody involved. It worked out well. Makes me look good. So the whole Facebook thing, that's changed over the years too now. And I like it all for me, it's the nostalgia. It's connecting with old friends. It's really reaching out sometimes to your friends who are going through something that's tough, and sometimes just a private message or just even a emoji, makes a difference to someone's life. And, I'm finding that, in the past few years, it's just been a very volatile space for, political beliefs or religious beliefs. And, and I'm all for everybody having their own, opinions and desires. But, when it gets ugly, and it's so weird, sometimes the most innocent of comments by someone turns so ugly to someone. Or if someone misspells something that people harp on that. And I find that so disheartening for me, because I enjoy people for whatever they feel, as long as no one's telling me to do something, telling me that I have to do something. So
you know what I think it is, and this has been, like you said, the past 5-6 years or so, back before Facebook, even before the internet by and large. Do you remember AM talk radio?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was the only real place that you would hear people really just expressing their opinions. I think to those Mike Royko kind of guys and, whatever. And there were people who would call into those shows, but you didn't really know anybody who called in to give an opinion. Right? There were those people, and you thought, God, he sounds like an old Archie Bunker, or she's an old battle axe, or what have you. But that was it. Well, Facebook now has given everybody a talk show. And it's so hard. I have someone close to me who has such a hard time not trying to change people's opinions. And I say to her, no one is listening to you. And by that, I mean to anyone.
Right.
Either I already know what I feel, so I like to read the people who are writing what I like, or there's the others who are never going to change their minds because they feel just as strongly as I do. So while I do post political, usually it's lighter stuff. It's a meme with Joe Biden or something. But when I see somebody saying, well, Joe Biden groped that girl, so I'm not going to vote for him, I don't even try. There's no
engage
point.
that, right. Or respond to it. I would never want to add the fuel to that fire, and then to point out that person's lack of, sincerity or lack of education and understanding what they're actually talking about. It's not for me but some people really love that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so many of these little groups on there that, you get a post and then, it's on everyone else's feed and
Yes.
everyone's commenting on it. And now I'm not going to, I do like to see what's being said. I don't interject mine like, hey, get out of here or stuff like that. But I am surprised sometimes by the people who do engage and how
Yeah.
strongly they feel about that kind of stuff. There's some stuff going on even like right now and the other day, and I'm bothered by it, but I'm not going to put my neck out and say that my opinion and my feelings are better than yours.
Right.
But we all have our own opinions, like you said. I just kind of look at it, but it can be very destructive.
Well, in the pre-Facebook days, I think everybody still had their same feelings, but uh, I was at family functions, where don't talk about religion or politics. That was the rule of the day, and you still went into the voting booth and did what you wanted to do, but that was it. But now, and again, I'm not saying by any means that I don't engage in the national political stuff. I noticed some of the local neighborhood groups are kind of minefields.
Yep.
And I don't know. I never know if when I see something like that, it's unique to where I live, or if it's because of where I live, but it's happening everywhere. Are
you part of that, like a neighborhood group on?
I have it in my feed, but there's never anything really worthwhile in it. I shouldn't say that. That's not what I mean at all. But nothing worthwhile enough for me to get into the conversation because other people are handling it. You know what I mean? People who know a lot more about the local issues.
I like to hear what's going on so much is, sometimes I want to say, well, what happened to you happens to everybody because you didn't do this or you were neglectful of doing this. So maybe that's why, your bike got stolen or, but, people stealing cactuses out of people's yards. And I mean, what the hell? I mean, oh my God.
See, and that's what I mean, though. I wonder, we have a place in Saugatuck, Michigan as well, and it's a smaller town, but a lot of the similar things go on there. People have an issue with a new building that's going up downtown, because it's a story and a half tall or something. But I guess it is pretty universal, and the internet, for all of its good qualities, also brings us that ability to share it.
How long have you been in Palm Springs now?
I've been here, it'll be 12 years in August. 12 years in August. Before that, I lived in St. Louis for 6 years. And before that, I was in San Francisco for a decade. And I've been gone from Chicago since '96. After college, I moved into the city and I did the whole Boys Town thing. I had a longtime partner, and his work is what took us to San Francisco and St. Louis. So yeah, I've had my taste of a couple different places.
Are you tired of the Palm Springs life at this point? Because it sounds like you've had various,
Not tired of it in a way. Like, I'll be honest, I knew it was time to move on from St. Louis. The relationship ended that got me there, and it wasn't a town that I had any real roots in or anything. And I wanted to come back to California. And San Francisco was too expensive to go back to as a single person at that point.
Okay.
And I loved it here. I'd always come here on holidays and stuff. And I determined, I sold my loft in St. Louis, packed up my white Volvo with whatever would fit in it, put everything else in storage. And by myself, I just got into that white car and drove across the country 4 days. And it was wonderful, and I kept hearing, who can turn the world on with a smile? But it really was. It was seeing parts of the country, finding beauty in the flats of Kansas, and then arriving here, and it was August, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to arrive when it was really, really hot. And I thought my head was going to explode. I knew one person here, Bill, my friend Bill, and he had a room for me to rent. So I stayed
that's where
with him.
You stayed with Bill, right?
Yeah, actually, it's for about 3 years.
Oh,
Yeah. And it was a good roommate situation. Uh, but yes, I guess your initial question, am I tired of it here? No, but I am always open, and so is Ken, my partner, always open to, well, what if someplace else might
yeah.
be on the horizon?
I
So I don't know, but it isn't that I got to get out of this town. It isn't that feeling.
I agree with you. I mean, we're now here 7.5 years, and
Hmm.
that's a long time in desert life. But it's and we've been in lockdown, for months now, and it's 24/7 with someone I've been together with for 37 years, and
That's wild.
and I'm so appreciative that I'm alive and being able to talk to you right now,
Hmm.
because who would have thought that? And
Absolutely.
things change. It's tough on a relationship during crises such as that we're going through. I miss,
I,
uh, I miss, I miss like seeing my friends. I miss physically seeing my friends and physically just giving them a hug. I'm a hugger. We're Italian. You're the same way too. But you really can't do that anymore. And I will say that it's a difficult for someone like me uh, to have that happen. So, I keep busy, but Palm Springs still is a beautiful place. I still, every day you go out there and you look at the mountains and something, and you're just like, it's art.
mhm.
And then, we have friends who, and you're great at it too, is you'll take a picture of this beautiful sunset or a sunrise, and you're just like, we live right here. And it's just,
Yeah.
I just think it's beautiful. And, there are other people who are so appreciative of that kind of view. And Palm Springs has so much to offer as far as that too. And yeah, it's hot in the summers.
I've, well, I've always said about the heat that the people I find who have a real problem with it, I mean, nobody likes it when it's 110, but the people who have a real problem with it are those that have come from places like San Diego or Santa Barbara, where the weather is always mild. But if you come from a Midwestern winter or an Eastern
Oh
winter,
yeah,
just flip it over in your mind. And I spent more time standing on an L platform with snot frozen to my beard, or the wind whipping you around, where you think your cheeks are going to fall off. I still prefer this to that. There's no question. Plus, the life is just simpler than a big city, right? We now live in a place that's about 10 minutes from the grocery store. We're way at the
yeah,
end of South,
you're farther now.
South Palm Springs, way down, which is great, and it's been great during the confinement. But only here is that considered a distance.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, when I first moved to Palm Springs and I'd have to go to Trader Joe's, I would think, oh, what else can I plan down there? Because it's in Cathedral
yeah.
City. And anywhere else, when you were in Naperville, you'd spend 40, 50 minutes just on a Saturday afternoon, going to
Getting
Costco
to
or something.
getting to an expressway that will take me somewhere.
Getting
It really was like
exactly.
that.
Life is simple here.
I don't miss any of that. I really don't miss I miss my family and friends. I mean, without a doubt, hello, all of you out there. That
Mhm.
part's tough. But I do not miss the traffic. I do not miss the weather. I do not miss, uh, congestion and shoveling snow mostly. I mean, that was just,
Shoveling snow.
no,
The logistics of getting around is just so different in a
yeah.
city.
It's paralyzing. I mean, when it
Yeah.
snows, everything shuts down. Here, when it rains, it shuts down for an hour or two somewhere maybe, or people can't get to work that day.
Right.
And it's weird for me to think of the reason because of rain, but it happens here.
Well, and you know what? And there's still, at least for me, maybe for other people too, there is a little bit of you get you become a desert rat after a while. And when you get to your car after it's been baking outside all day and the temperature inside of it says 130, what do? Take a picture.
Always.
And I love that I have to drive like Bette Midler in Down and Out in Beverly Hills because the steering wheel's so hot. And it's like it's it's not fun exactly, but it has or maybe it's that thing like we started out saying, seeing life as a sitcom.
Well, I laugh every day, Nick. There's something to laugh at
Well,
every
you live with Mark.
He makes me laugh. He does make me laugh
He
sometimes,
does. He's
just
funny.
just because of the way he lays things out in his canoodle. But he's kept me really kind of he's always busy. You know, me, I'm very happy with, you know, but I have too much of this now. There's just,
Right.
it's stir crazy. And, you know, I'm seeing so many, you know, people, some are getting sick, some are getting this because they didn't stay in, or, you
Hmm.
know, and you can't blame every restaurant in town for this, or every bar. You know, people are responsible for themselves too. So, but I feel sorry for those who are affected. And we, you know, a lot of our friends, you know, you see the same things. You know, people, it gets close to people, and
It does.
it's
And
tough.
we're an older community by and large. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, compromised,
um, and compromised
compromised
immune
systems.
systems and all sorts of things. So it's
So I
serious, but don't let's end on this note.
no, oh God,
Bring
no.
up something. Bring up something perky.
Okay, well, again, well, you know, we haven't scratched, you know, some of our diva attractions and our real life experiences with some of those wonderful ladies that we love: Joan Rivers, Bette
Mm,
Midler,
mm.
Cher, Carol Burnett. That's, you know, we'll get into that some other time too. But uh, if you were to say, growing up, what was your favorite show that made an impact on you?
Tell me an age, because there's a
Uh,
difference.
well, I think it's most, I would say it's in your early teens, 12.
It probably was the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Um, I just loved her. I loved her apartment. Um, I think that I have a great love of architecture and design and decor, and I think a lot of that started from that. I would take notebook paper and a pencil, and I would draw the floor plan of that apartment and do different things to it and stuff. And looking back, also there was something in that character, Mary Richards, that was always classy, plucky, though. You know, she got herself in her car and moved from Roseburg, Minnesota down to Minneapolis. Um, and the camaraderie of the office and her friendships. Um, and I didn't know any of that at the time. I just knew I wanted to be in there. I wanted to be at her bad parties, you know, where the lights went out, or, you know, Georgette had a baby in her bedroom or something. I
Right.
wanted to be there. I wanted to be there. So I really think that would be it. I wish I could say it was something like, you know, Omnibus, or
Oh,
you know,
no, no, no. I mean,
something serious. But I really, if I had to choose one, I'm rolling through my head thinking if there was anything else. Uh, the variety shows, of course.
I miss those the most. I mean, those were like,
Yeah, what
everybody
was
had,
yours? What was yours?
oh, Burnett. There's no question. That's the Carol Burnett show. And then Sonny and Cher was very, very special to me. And, you know, when they broke up, I was so upset. And, you know, it was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to see this anymore or that anymore. Uh, I really was, those were my real tight, continuous, got us hardcore, had to see it every week or something like that.
Any series other than variety?
Oh, you know, uh, for me, you know, growing up, I loved a lot of the comedy sitcoms, or, you know, the ones we grew up with: Brady Bunch, Partridge
I was
Family.
going to say Friday nights.
Yeah,
Friday
Odd
nights.
Couple, Room 222 at some
Yeah.
point.
And
Love
then top it off with Love American
Love
Style.
American Style. They were dirty to me at that time,
Oh
and
yeah.
I
And
loved.
you'd often see a sexy guy with his shirt off on Love
Right.
American Style.
Oh yeah, and I can tell you which episode when it starts if it's good enough to stay on to it. I could. I do say that. I study reruns. You know, and now at Netflix you can watch, you know, so many things. And I've studied several sitcoms, and I believe that it's helped me sometimes with my comedic timing.
Oh,
Uh,
well,
and it's
we forgot the queen of them all, I Love
oh,
Lucy, which,
I
was on 20 times a day during the day on WGN,
yeah,
and it was a constant.
yeah.
And talk about comic timing. Go ahead.
Well, it I go back now and watch it and kind of think, wow, it was groundbreaking. It was. I watch though the actual artistry of each
Hmm.
one of those characters, each one of them, not just Lucy, not just Desi Arnaz. You know, you got Vivian Vance and Bill Frawley for all of his, you know,
And
curmudgeon.
and the
Brilliant.
character players that would come on, and
Oh,
Mary Wicks and what was Mary Jane Croft?
Mary Jane Croft. Yeah.
So many of those. The woman who went on to play Gladys Ziffel from Green Acres, she was often at a card party or something.
Right. I know her name. It's on the tip of my tongue.
The guy who put Lucy on a budget, that actor, Charles, I forget. But watching the character players. And the other thing that I often notice when I'm watching that show, and knowing that it came from that show, is the whole 3-camera technique.
Yeah.
And I will sometimes, one time, my partner, who has a totally different frame of reference of childhood than mine. He's a little bit older, so television was different, from small farm town, didn't know from show tunes or anything like that. So I was telling him about the 3-camera technique. And as we continued to talk, I would say, okay, camera 1, close up on you. And I'd say, okay, camera 2, long shot of the whole room. I'd start to talk, camera 3, come in on me. But I did it for about 5 minutes, and he said, okay, you can stop that now. I've got the 3-camera technique. But watch that on Lucy and know that it was never done before.
Right. The whole Desilu, well, we could talk about that forever. And
you know what I just stumbled on the other night? And I watched it, because I hadn't seen it since it first aired, was Little Lucy's home movie documentary.
Oh, yeah. I watched it once a year at least. I do.
It is well worth it. It really was. And so sweet, bittersweet.
Yeah, it is. And, and I think since the time that she and Desi Jr. did it, there's a different kind of appreciation for it even now, the value that had in their lives,
For sure.
That they learned. And I find that very interesting. And I just finished doing my study of the Here's Lucy show. Hulu has it. And I'm amazed sometimes at some of the things I see, what I hear, and the similarities of the plot lines that really connect.
Oh, they were almost all the same.
I mean,
in a good way. Was that Lucille Carter with Lucy and Desi Jr.? Was that Here's Lucy?
Here's Lucy was Carter. Now, I found this out by listening to an interview with Little Lou. All of Lucy's characters had, so it was Arnaz, right? It has the AR in there. So it's Carmichael, Carter,
Ricardo.
And Ricardo. It always had for the Arnaz part, AR, isn't
the
that?
best name? But the best name was McGillicuddy. Oh. That name makes me laugh out loud just hearing it.
It's great. And like I said, I watched through the whole series again, and Lucy always did 6 seasons. So she was guaranteed the syndication rights.
Yeah.
So after every 6 years, she kind of changed.
Do you remember at some point, they never aired when we were kids, but then at some point those Lucy Desi comedy hours came out, and it was like finding a lost treasure or something. It's 40 years ago now, but when those came out, and it was just, wow, it's them, but it's different, and we never saw those before. It was very strange, but good.
Yeah, and I bought that whole series. I bought all the I Love Lucy's, and I bought the whole Lucy Desi comedy hours, and some of them are good. Some are pretty choppy, and some are almost like a different show in the first half hour, and the second half is
and in comes Eve Arden, or
yeah.
What's her name?
Tallulah Bankhead.
Tallulah.
That's my favorite Lucy Desi comedy hour one. That's great. Oh, but you and I can go on and on about the Lucy stuff, and I want to at some point. Nick, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate this. Is my first one back, and hopefully this works. Maybe we can get it up pretty soon, and promise me we can do another one. We have so many topics.
Absolutely. And I have to say, the best part of it was the conversation with you. It's been so long, and it feels like we were just sitting there catching up, and yet it feels like not a day went by. So thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
And we will do it again.
All right. We'll see you all out there in KMC land, hopefully some other time. Thanks again, Nick.
Bye-bye, Keith. Love you.
I love you too.